Don't you hate it when a game is too easy? Don't you like telling your friends how much better KH2 is on Critical Level 1 and how fun it is spamming Reflect instead of mashing the X button? Or in Banjo-Kazooie where they make all the collectibles invisible in hard mode? Okay, that one isn't real, but you know what is very real? Metroid. Let's talk about it. This series has a sort of weird relationship with difficulty. I mean, some people would say that Metroid on the NES is one of the hardest games ever made, but then say modern Metroid games can't really compare to things like Blasphemous or Hollow Knight. My first thought is, good. You can keep the instant death pits and money ghosts and, frankly, money in general. We don't need these things here on planet Zebes. But my second thought, as a person who has played all of these games an embarrassing amount of times, what does being hard mean in a Metroid game or any search action game? A little philosophical, but don't worry, I'm gonna go through it in a boringly practical way, just for you. So the first thing you gotta mention is that in Metroid, Metroid 2, and Super Metroid, there is no hard mode. God, could you imagine Metroid on NES with a harder mode? I think YouTube review guys would just burst into flames at the sight of that on the menu. No, the hard mode got its proper start in Metroid Prime. And since the hard mode is more or less the same across all three Prime games, I'll just talk about them all here. Actually, this leads me to my second thing. There are three categories of hard modes present in Metroid: boring, transformative, and borderline joke. Prime and Prime 2, as well as Samus Returns and Dread, fit into the first category. They're all very boring. Not just in how they alter the experience, but in execution as well. I have played Metroid Prime more times than any other video game in existence, easily over 100 times. 3 or 4 times a year at the very least, and almost never do I feel compelled to play it on hard mode. It's not that it's too hard or anything, it's just really annoying and tedious. All it does is lower your damage output and increase the enemy's damage output. And in a game where combat is rarely the most engaging part, it just drags it out to unbearable levels sometimes. A boss like Thardus or Ridley is a massive pain in the ass now, as they were already big dumb damage sponges. But credit where it's due to the Omega Pirate and the Metroid Prime. These bosses have long since lost their luster in terms of difficulty for me, so I actually do find the added health makes a more engaging battle. Especially with the Omega Pirate, where he summons mobs during the battle. It can get very hectic trying to manage all of that in the heat of things. The moment-to-moment gameplay is just kind of made demonstrably worse by hard mode, though. Now even crappy little bug guys take way too much punishment before going down. The tuning is just completely off. This goes double for Metroid Prime 2, holy shit. This game is already pretty tough, as I've talked about in multiple videos up until this point, but it's a whole new level of misery on hard mode. I think if they just kept the damage or health values the same and just cut the amount of expansions that increase your missiles or ammo, maybe alter enemy placement and boss behavior, that could make a really great hard mode, hint hint. Prime 3 is almost there. You are forced to use the hyper mode a lot more thanks to the buffed enemies, which can lead to some tense enemy encounters after you're done using hyper mode. In hyper mode, the difficulty, just like in standard and veteran, hyper mode, the game mechanic, absolutely obliterates enemies and makes you invincible, so its drawbacks are only felt after it runs out. This ends up making bosses catastrophically more difficult, especially Moganar and Omega Ridley, because those guys already tested the balance of the hyper mode pretty well and are just brutal at higher difficulties. And yes, I'll go into hyper mode more specifically in a later video. He said the thing, please clap. I'll hold off on talking about Samus Returns and Dread for now, because there are other secrets lying in wait for those games. But just to say, their hard modes aren't terrible, but aren't amazing either. I tend to only play these games on hard since they are the kind of games that become very easy once you know exactly how to play them. And in this case, hard mode is more or less just a smaller margin of error. You still deal the same amount of damage, but take a lot more in exchange. It doesn't wildly alter the experience, but it makes repeat Dread playthroughs not completely autopilot from me. Especially the final boss who whoops your ass in like 5 or 6 hits. The next category I want to talk about is my favorite and is basically the only reason I wrote this video. The ones that actually truly change the game you are playing. Unfortunately, this only applies to Zero Mission and to a lesser extent Fusion, and in Fusion you need to play it in Japanese to unlock that hard mode, so it's a big ol' shrug for me. Have not played it. Either way, both games decide to change the amount of ammo acquired from expansions, as well as half the health from energy tanks. Enemies not only hit harder, but stronger variants are placed in earlier locations, in certain areas even have more enemies to either overwhelm you, or are placed in such a way to make simple traversal much trickier. And then the bosses not only get a buff, but some are even given altered attack patterns or behavior, like changing phases much quicker. This may be a lot to take in, but holy shit, it's a meaningfully hard mode! Zero Mission is an awesome game, but it's a very easy and very short game. It makes up for this in its superb replay value and how much it's designed around alternate play orders, and the hard mode just adds to that variety. Something as simple as getting 2 missiles instead of 5 with each pack makes missiles feel like a real limited resource, even late into the game, and its effects are felt instantly. This charge beam wormy guy takes 3 shots to kill and is already a pretty tricky boss to beat in the first encounter, so on hard mode, where you're whacking the extra 3 shots, you gotta get lucky enough to replenish your missiles mid-fight, get lucky enough to get 3 shots in, and get lucky enough that it doesn't just run away before you can do all those things. That encounter is sort of just hard mode in microcosm. Other boss encounters that were already tough, like Mother Brain or the 100% Robo Ridley fight, become huge challenges thanks to the more aggressive and defensive patterns, and the ending sequence in general on 100% hard mode is one of the hardest goddamn things I have ever done in any game, let alone Metroid. I don't even want to think about how many times it took me to do this without save states or rewind. Even once pathetic bosses are granted new life with a combination of hard mode and various challenge runs like low percent or alternate sequences, getting the Varia suit early and going through Norfair and Ridley as soon as possible leads to a pretty tough battle against Ridley, but also a surprisingly difficult battle against the Yamako. This fucking thing was my first real roadblock in low percent hard mode. I feel like cause there is so much choice given to players in general with Zero Mission, and how much they tailor the experience to be a fresh challenge, even to people like me that can play the game with their brain waves after 20 years, dear lord. Hard mode has genuinely moved Zero Mission up in my estimation, from worse Super Metroid to different Super Metroid. And in my world, being compared to Super, even in a neutral light, is the highest praise a man can give. But there is a few wildcards left to talk about, and folks, I think these might actually be the best ones. Definitely the funniest ones. Going in order of release, the first in the category of LMAO, is this a fucking joke, is Metroid Other M. Now, I have made it subtly apparent that I do not like Metroid Other M. I actually think it's not hated enough by the fan base, because it really is a miserable piece of shit, but I will always give credit where it's due, and this game's hard mode is a true measure of pain. In a way, it sort of exposes how thin and tedious the regular challenges of the game are by stripping away all energy tanks and missiles. That means the game becomes a game of don't get hit, and then, if hit, use focus again and again. And this is a game where it's both super easy to never take any damage and weirdly hard to deal with enemies who are damage sponges and then take you out in 3 hits. In hard mode, the game just isn't lying to you anymore that it's a Metroid game, and it just becomes a pure action game. Also, weirdly enough, since there are no items to collect, the secret boss against Phantoon is not doable in hard mode. I mean, it probably would have made me hurl my Wii remote through the TV screen, But hey, I like that fight, so it's a shame. Similarly, let's talk about the most controversial of the borderline gag difficulties, Fusion Mode. So, since about 25 people in total bought and played Samus Returns, you may not remember this, but as a bonus for getting the Samus and Metroid Amiibo 2-pack, which if you want now goes for oh my god, you unlocked a secret harder hard mode. Not only that, but it actually gave Samus an alternate suit based on the Fusion suit. It was more robot-y than organic like the normal Fusion suit, which was either a limitation of texture swapping from the Samus Returns power suit, or some kind of giga-brained 5D chess hint towards the Dread suit. Problem was, both of these things are pretty cool, and not only are they locked behind what is essentially DLC, but a much worse form of DLC, where you've got to get a, at best, $30 bundle that's in short supply alongside your $40 3DS game in 2017, the same year that the Switch came out. People were pretty pissed about this, rightfully so, and we will get into how Dread handled it in a moment. The main point is that Fusion Mode, while not limiting items like Zero Mission or removing them like Other M, quadruples enemy damage. This is in a game with already absurdly high damage values, and was seen as a step up in overall difficulty from even Other M. It almost becomes a don't get hit mode, and by the time you're at the final boss, you can maybe take like 2 hits from it. Dread mode, though? You want to talk about don't get hit modes. Literally, you are not allowed to take even 1 hit. You can have maximum health and anything that touches you kills you. And this sounds miserable, right? Dread, to the hoi polloi, already is the toughest game in the series. It has the trickiest boss fights, the most engaging and constant sense of action. Doesn't a mode that insta-kill you sound like a nightmare? Something so pointlessly hard that it's not even worth trying, even as you count the days for a Metroid 6? Or that Super Metroid remake that will never happen, give it up guys. It's Metroid Dread! Why the fuck would I put up with this when it's perfectly hard the way that it is? You thought this video was just my excuse to talk about Zero Mission hard mode, and thinly veil it in a larger topic about hard modes in the series? Wrong, bitch! It was always about Dread mode. I truly cannot believe how incredible it is to play this game in this insane way, and I'm even more blown away by just how well it works. What clinches it is 2 important factors: the smart boss design and the copious amount of checkpoints. Like with a lot of modern Metroidvanias, and a little unlike previous Metroid games, Dread incorporates boss fights where you can, in fact, learn how to beat them without taking any damage. No randomly undodgeable moves, patterns are ruthless and unforgiving without being overwhelming, and thanks to there always being a checkpoint right outside the boss door, a next attempt is never too far away. This also helps with regular traversal, as spoilers, the vast majority of your deaths will be to random enemies on the way from one item or one boss to another. I know, for me, the hardest section was probably the path to Drogaiga, and then, somehow, they also actually made Drogaiga an interesting and worthwhile boss. It took literally making its attacks insta-kill, but it's no longer just a weird 30-second thing over before it starts. You aren't allowed to just tank hits and unload anymore. You gotta be aware of your surroundings. This even extends to the central units. Some of these bastards are a complete nightmare on Dread mode just because of the bullet hell nature of the combat arena. Other bosses that are already tough in the standard game, like Askew and Experiment Z57, are tough in a way that encourages you to seriously engage with quick kill strategies, like entering the battle with a Shine Spark, or killing Z57 during the Flappy Bird sequence, also with a Shine Spark. It's funny, it took me until earlier this year to give Dread mode a try, even though it's been in the game, via a free update alongside the godsend that is Boss Rush mode, since like 2022. I was just too afraid to commit. I was pretty confident in my abilities with the game. I had even semi-jokingly stated multiple times how easy the game was for me, even on hard mode, and that I can always beat Ravenbeak on my first try, but I'll admit, the idea of having that bravado crammed back in my face and made to feel pathetic and helpless by this game scared me. As I kept replaying the game, though, I naturally started to understand why I felt the game was easy and why that's not only a good thing, but easily led to the creation of something like Dread Mode. It's like I said, these bosses are so fairly designed that the barrier to entry is tough, but anyone can learn the patterns and make it to the end. Hell, my favorite boss in the game, besides Big Bird himself, was Golzuna, a boss that requires you to endure a lengthy fight where only a few mistakes on any difficulty means death, especially if you fight it early before getting the gravity suit. Dread Mode is just that philosophy extended to the whole game, and with no room for error. That is all to say, man, what a magnificent challenge Ravenbeak is in Dread Mode. Replaying Hollow Knight and playing Dread Mode for the first time so close together really made me appreciate how Ravenbeak is like the most fun parts of the Hollow Knight fight, as well as the Radiance mixed into one guy and putting your reflexes and memory to the absolute test. After an hour of trial and error of fighting him, nothing feels better. I think Dread Mode saved Metroid Dread for me. Yeah, of course I love the game, but I also have my problems and drawbacks with it, just like I did for Zero Mission. Dread Mode reveals how intricately designed and fun so much of the game is, not just in combat, but traversal. Even though I haven't played it on Dread Mode a second time, that one experience has altered how I play the game forever. Compared to something like Steel Soul Mode and Hollow Knight, another fun, weird hard mode, but Steel Soul Mode changes Hollow Knight into a pseudo-roguelike, whereas Dread Mode turns Metroid Dread into I wanna be the guy. Metroid games are fun, among other reasons, because they make you feel powerful. Every upgrade is so tactile and instantly useful, and you start so small and become a walking god of destruction by the end. I like games like Hollow Knight and Blasphemous, of course, but I am generally unimpressed by Souls-like elements and boss patterns and everything like that. I just want to chill when I play these games. Other subpar hard modes did nothing but confirm my suspicions, but Dread Mode opened my eyes a little. With the right experience and mindset, it turns out I do like super challenging games. I replayed Hollow Knight afterwards and went from a broad strokes mild hater to a huge fan of it and its vibe. It's honestly probably one of my favorite Metroidvanias now. Difficulty, especially challenge modes, are a hard balance to strike in these kind of search action games, and a lot of times, yeah, are not worth the nuisance. But sometimes it just is straight up fun to let yourself lose over and over again to a game and trust it enough that you can make it to the end just fine if you just keep on pushing. I'm Wyatt on Planet Zebez, and join me next time as I take another look at a topical aspect of Metroid history. See you there.